Mr. President, thank you very much for your time. How are you this morning?
I'm fine, and thanks for having me.
So, what's a typical day like for the President of Liberia? What would you typically be doing, sir?
At this time, very busy because everybody wants to see you. Everybody thinks this is an opportunity for employment, to work for government. And so you start from your house to the office. Everybody's engaging you, but it will settle down.
Right. Mr. President, let's just go back to your village. You grew up in Wasonga in the north of Liberia. I wonder, now that you've had a chance to live this full life, how has Liberia changed? What was your childhood like?
My mother was handicapped, and I had no father around. We were 5 boys, but for some reason, my mother thought I should go to school, working every aspect of my life from elementary to high school to college to the present. So I never had a normal childhood life, but it's paying up because I'm sure God was preparing me for a reason.
And when you reflect on what you wanted to become in those very difficult circumstances, what was your ambition? Did you ever imagine that you'd be president of Liberia?
Not even near that. I never thought about even being a minister or anything. I just wanted to go to school, to get education, to help my mom, and to live a normal life. My ambition wasn't presidency or anything else, but to live a normal life.
Right. And I also know that you went to the prestigious College of West Africa in the capital, Monrovia. And from what I've read, you worked as a school janitor at night, cleaning toilets, and you studied during the day. What memories do you have of that time?
That was a little bit of icing on the cake because I actually tapped rubber. I walked from Foya to Bummy Hills, then Tottenham Bay. Now I walk from Foya to Firestone. I tap rubber. I work as janitor. I served some bachelors while I was in elementary school. I've done everything to make a living.
What was the toughest job you did? Tapping rubber sounds like it.
And one of the experience I had was they have a way of carrying the rubber on their shoulders. I wasn't used to that. I put a bucket on my head and I fell and the latex wasted on me. And the total amount they paid me was just enough to buy 2 pairs of short trousers and 2 short sleeve shirts. And I paid my way to Monrovia. But that was all. It was enough at the time.
And as you grew up, what other jobs did you hold, apart from, when you were qualified after you'd been educated?
At the dormitories, I was on a partial scholarship. I became head of the boys, and at the same time, working in the business office. And when I started going to college, I was made assistant dean, and I was given 2 rooms in the dorm. But I never had a vacation because I had to use my vacation time to work for my upkeep and then for my tuition. So I only had a week with my mom every year, and then I was going to the university. So I had a busy life all my life.
And there you are, then you become minister, then you become vice president, and now you're president.
1983, I became the Minister of Agriculture. And to be very frank, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf's husband was one of my deputies.
Oh.
I was the youngest minister at the time. To this day, none of my assistant minister or deputy minister, none of them is alive. Later on, I left government for a while and took a break. And Ellen came and asked me to be vice president for 2 times.
Mr. President, when you were vice president, did you feel like you were fully deployed? Someone talks about a car parked in the garage.
The people have a way of saying things. As vice president, our Constitution says you preside over the Senate without a vote. You also assist the president. I was very busy. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf would tell you I was very busy. I handled a lot of things for her. I went 3 times to the UN General Assembly. I resolved a lot of crises. So I wasn't a park car. What I did say They asked me, what would you do as president that you didn't do as vice president? And I said, if you want to see a race car, put it on the racetrack. And they misunderstood that, of course. That's always the case.
You're listening to the BBC's Africa Daily podcast with me, Alan Kasucha, and today I'm speaking to President Joseph Boakai of Liberia. Now, we've spent quite a bit of time on his personal story because, after all, not a lot of presidents have tapped rubber or cleaned toilets to get by in their youth. But let's fast forward the conversation to what he's going to do now he's actually the president. His election campaign last year concentrated on a number of issues. First, a promise to finally set up a war crimes court to work for justice and reconciliation after the two brutal civil wars which devastated the country and left hundreds of thousands dead or displaced. Also to sort out the dreadful Liberian roads and to deal with a drug epidemic which the United Nations says affects around 20% of young people in the country. But the biggest pledge was to clean up politics and stamp out corruption. For decades, Liberia was ranked poorly on Transparency International's corruption index, and in the last few years, there have been protests as Liberians have lost patience, accusing the government of mismanagement of funds and corruption, while the cost of living has spiraled for normal people. That's something he says he takes seriously.
Corruption is responsible for where we are, for all the crises we've had, because a lot of people will come to government believing that they come there to enrich themselves. They don't understand what public service is about. So we've had problems with people believing that what for government is for them. They want to make future for their children, for their families, and so forth. We are not a poor country. Liberia is very well endowed. We have to believe that if we work hard, we improve our country, we can live better life. But a lot of people haven't grasped that concept yet.
So how do you push back against it? How do you plan to reduce it? It's something that the whole world is struggling with, corruption.
Well, because of my own upbringing and working, I'm not perfect, but I try my best to make sure that while in government, even when I worked for a public corporation, I did not tamper with what belonged to the corporation. I've lived in my house for 42 years. I'm still happy. We haven't learned to live by what we earn. If people just begin to learn to cut their coats to their measurement, not only Liberia, but even Africa will be a better place. So corruption is an issue, and corruption is the ticket upon which we came to this office, and we're going to fight it.
So presumably any ministers or public servants found to be corrupt will be fired?
Immediately, and there's no if and and about it. People who come into government, I've told them over and again, and they know me for what I stand for. That's why I'm very selective as to people we bring to government to make sure that they understand that we came on a rescue ticket to rescue this country from corrupt officials, but to make sure that we move the country in a direction that there will be development that an ordinary person can live.
Mr. President, agriculture is the other issue. You want to boost agricultural production, yet Liberia continues to rely heavily on food imports. I wonder, how is that going to change?
I started working in the agriculture sector. I went to work with farmers to grow coffee, cocoa, oil palm, to purchase coffee, rice, and I believe agriculture is the way to go. LPMC at the time was able to empower farmers. Farmers could buy vehicles, send their children to school. And I believe in Africa, we're not going to manufacture and compete manufacturing new aircrafts or new automobiles, but we can feed the world if we manage, because Liberia is so well endowed. We have the water, we have the soil, we have the land. We don't need to import the amount of rice we are importing. We can produce it.
Mr. President, the cost of food is affecting people not just in Liberia but around the world. Are you promising Liberians a quick fix?
Not a quick fix, but in some areas, Liberia does. When I was Minister of Agriculture, we never imported poultry. We had all the farms producing, and just about 30% of our consumable rice in this country was being imported. We can do it. We can feed ourselves. If we cut down corruption, use our resources properly, we can feed ourselves and even export.
And you also say that no car should get stuck in the mud. The roads in Liberia sound bad, but to invest in the roads, you need money from somewhere. So how do you plan to pay for better roads?
I mean, if you live in Europe, you know every year there's going to be winter, there's going to be snow. So for the roads during the rain season to be bad is not a surprise. So what I am saying is based on my own experience, year after year, cars are stuck in the mud, people can't move. You know the impact that has on health, on education, on people movement, the prices of goods. So I said that at least within the first 100 days, we should be able to make all vehicles move on our roads, not paving them, but to make sure that we remove all the bad stuff, fill them up, and make it possible for people to move. That's what I said, and that's what we're working on.
At this point, I just want to touch on something that you talked about on the campaign trail. You said that the drug use was one of the biggest problems that needed to be confronted, especially amongst young people in Liberia. Do you think this is a law and order issue, or is this a society problem?
I love this country. I have never lived for long outside this country. I have seen everything that had made Liberia great disappear. The Duke, the did. But then we're losing our children, the future of this country. We cannot allow that to happen. And that's why we're going to fight.
Does that mean giving police more money? What does that mean, fight to do everything that you need to do?
It means that we have our young people who are already on drugs. We have to deploy counselors that will be able to engage them. We have to be able to give them vocational training to make them know we can put value on their lives. It takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of effort. We need international support, but we have to show that we are serious about it. And I tell you, to demonstrate that, I and my vice president were the first who took drug tests, and we have already commissioned a group that will be working with the young people to make sure that we fight drugs in our borders from entering this country. It's not going to be easy, but that's the task we have undertaken to do.
Right, Mr. President. In 2009, the Liberia Truth and Reconciliation Commission delivered a report that said there should be a war crimes court to deal with the worst offenses from the Liberia Civil War. You said that this would happen. Have you started that process, sir?
To be very frank with you, my initial thinking was to go the South African way, truth and reconciliation. But again, in an area where there have been conflict, the people who bear the greatest responsibility must acknowledge the fact that they bear it, and they should be able to repent and bring about peace. If they don't, impunity is not a way to go. We need to reconcile this country, and if people are willing to reconcile the country and be able to make up for their wrongdoings, I think this country will move further. So we believe that people should first admit that what they did was wrong, and they should be willing to reconcile.
You're old enough to be a grandfather to a lot of Liberians, probably majority of them. What are you bringing to them? Isn't there a mismatch given your age?
Fortunately, they saw in me what it takes as an elderly person to bring this country together. They know I'm honest. They know what I'm saying to them is coming from the heart. The population believe in me, and I want to keep that as my weapon to bring people to the table, to make the young people know that I am here only to guide a process that will bring this country to where it should be, and they can take it over.
And finally, Mr. President, I wonder, what sort of music do you listen to? I know that you're a Baptist preacher. Does that mean that your playlist is full of hymns?
I'm a lover of music. You know, I never had time for too much fun, but I love music.
What do you listen to?
All kinds of music. I like jazz. I like African music. I love some of my best music where people like Nat King Cole and Harry Belafonte. I mean, all kinds of. I'm a lover of music, and I'm a lover of sport. I'm Arsenal fan.
Arsenal, like me.
As a matter of fact, the Arsenal people know me because I've been to the Emirates twice, and I get all their souvenirs.
Hopefully, we can watch a match together one day.
One day, and I am a Ghana godfather.
Arsenal. I really hope I get to watch the match with him at the Emirates Stadium one day. Thank you to President Joseph Boakai of Liberia for having such a frank chat with me and you. And thank you to our reporter in Monrovia, Moses Gazeau, and producer Pariso Kuban for their tenacity in setting this up.